Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to come to our webinar today. Just a few housekeeping. You're all muted, so that's fine. Just stay muted. The session will be recorded. We'd love you to engage. So if you have any comments or anything like that, please continue to engage through the chat. But questions, we'll go to Q&A. And we'll answer the questions at the end of the session. So please, just keep your questions in Q&A if you can. And we have Kellie here. So Kellie will be our main presenter today. She's from Bloome Consulting, and we'll hear a little bit more about Bloome later on in the presentation. And our wonderful host is Helga. She's a CSM at Raisley. I'll be in the background, so I'll be kind of through the chat and Q&A, so you won't hear from me again until the end. Over to Helga.
We are calling today from different locations. So Lauren is based in Bandjula, and Kellie is based in Mianju. And I'm based in Karamena Nema in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And we want to acknowledge that across the world, many of us work on stolen land, and we are committed to land rights, return of power, and reconciliation for First Nation people.
Oh, you're going to hear from me again, actually. I'm going to let you know what we're covering. So we're going to go through an introduction to regular giving. And then Kellie's going to take us through her roadmap to success, how we can help along the way, and then we'll go through to Q&A with whatever time we have left. So let's get started talking about why fundraising or why regular giving is so important to your fundraising. And over to Helga.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. We have been looking at data across our platform and found that across the campaigns that run on Raisley, the campaigns that actually have regular giving enabled, only 6% of donors were regular givers. But these regular donors contributed 24% of the fundraising, so basically 4 times more than a single donation. We actually have excluded the really, really large donations just to make sure we are not looking and focusing too much on exceptions. But this indicates there's a great potential in those regular donors. In addition, campaigns that use regular giving raise twice the amount that campaigns that don't have regular giving enabled on their campaign. With our analysis, we controlled for campaign types and so on as well. So we are pretty confident in that information. But the fact that only 6% are currently setting up as regular donors, there's a little bit of room for improvement there. So we thought, why not invite Kellie to talk about it and see what an organization can do to establish a regular giving program and really ramp up those numbers. So we're super excited to have Kellie here from Bloome Consulting, who have supported many charities with their regular giving program. So Kellie, why is regular giving so important?
Great. Thanks, Helga. And hi, everyone. Yeah, Kel here from Bloome Consulting. Really excited to be here on this webinar with the Raisley team, talking all things regular giving, which we think is just super important. So as Helga outlined in all these stats from Raisley, regular giving is a really great way to provide an additional source of income for your charity. The great thing about regular giving is that it can provide a sustainable and predictable income stream for your organisation. And it can end up becoming quite a significant part of your fundraising strategy if done well. So if your charity isn't currently doing regular giving, it's certainly something you should be exploring. And if you do have an existing program in place, there will always be ways to optimize it, which we'll explore today.
Great. So before we dive into the success, the building blocks for a successful regular giving program, we really want to know what is actually the most challenging aspect of regular giving for you at this point in time. So yeah, let's run a little poll. Get your mouse ready and answer this one question for us, please. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it, but it's only one question, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. But what aspect of the regular giving is most challenging for your organization? Okay, let's show some results. I'm really intrigued what is the most challenging thing at the moment. Great. Very cool. Well, the good news is we will covering all these aspects, including not having regular giving program at all, which is absolutely not a problem because then the world is your oyster and you can start on this amazing journey and get really well set up with what Kellie has to share today. So let's dive in and talk about that roadmap.
Awesome. Great stuff. It was really great to see the results in the poll there. And it certainly is exactly what we're hearing from a lot of charities we speak to are all the main things that people are concerned about and having issues with. So that's why we're here today. We are here today to talk about our roadmap to success. So we're going to walk through 7 key steps that we think are really important for you to consider with your regular giving strategy. We find lots of charities come to us and they want to jump straight into acquiring new donors. The problem is, though, they haven't got their foundation set up for their regular giving program. And so often they go out to market, but it will result in failure because they don't have their foundations laid. So the first 5 steps that we're going to look through today are all about getting your foundation set up and really making sure that once you do launch your program, everything is set up perfectly and you'll be more likely to succeed. The last 2 steps we're going to talk about, and I know we're high on the poll, was really about acquiring regular givers and building that base of predictable monthly income. But yeah, really important. First 5 steps are going to be really setting those foundations. So firstly, let's get stuck into goals. So I'm sure you all understand the importance of goal setting. And some of you might even be doing it, and some of you might be too busy to even think about goals. And sometimes we find these get really overlooked. But goals are there to help provide that motivation and focus that you need. And for everyone in the organization to have a really clear pathway of what you're trying to achieve and how. So the little acronym we've got up on the screen there is SMART, because we love to use SMART goals. They can provide a really great structure. So let's walk through what are those key elements of a SMART goal. So firstly, your goals should be specific and clearly demonstrate what you're trying to achieve. They should be measurable. This is a big one. Now, there's no use creating a goal that you can't measure. So you need to think through what data will you use to report on to show you if you've met that goal. You need to make sure your goals are achievable. Do you have all the right resources and budget and skills in place? Setting an unrealistic goal will often result in failure, and it will make working towards goals in the future a little less motivating. Ensure your goals are relevant and results-based. And the last element is time-bound. So it's really critical to ensure that you have a clear deadline as to when you want to achieve the goal by. And a type of example to put this into practice of a SMART goal that you could use in trying to build your regular giving program could be something like convert 100 existing donors to regular giving by the 30th of June with an average gift of 35. So if you can, try and put aside some time for setting some really SMART goals. They will be a really big help in giving you the direction you need to succeed with your regular giving program.
Great to hear that, Kellie, and that example really brings it home. That example you gave sounds more like an overarching goal for your strategy for your regular giving, maybe. Do you set SMART goals for smaller steps along the way as well?
Absolutely, yes. So then you'd need, that's your overarching goal, then you'd need to break it down and go, well, how are we going to get there? So you might have other goals around, creating a landing page by a certain time period. So there's lots of little goals that you would then set to kind of give you your roadmap as to how you would achieve those key goals.
Oh yeah, that's a really great example. Thank you.
No worries. All right, great. So next up, we are talking about your regular giving program. So after your goals are set, it's time to dive in and really start to define what does your regular giving program look like. You really need to consider your proposition for regular support and how you're going to connect with your donors and inspire action. Another thing to consider is creating a name for your regular giving program. We find one of the key reasons people commit to regular giving is to become a part of a real community. So by creating a special name for your program, you can speak to this group of donors in a really meaningful way. If you do have the opportunity to create a dedicated name, make sure it aligns with your brand and it really makes sense for your donors. One example of a charity who's done this really well, who we found, is Fred Hollows Foundation. So I'm not sure if anyone knows of Fred Hollows Foundation. They do amazing things for people with vision impairment. Now, their positioning is help restore sight, keep Fred's vision alive. And their regular donors, me one of them, we are referred to as visionaries. Now, this is a really clever alignment, and in one word, clearly demonstrates the impact that regular donors like myself can make to people without sight. Now, Fred Hollows was able to come up with a name that aligns strongly with their vision and their core proposition for support, whilst at the same time creating a real sense of community for their regular donors. So taking the time to think through your program and your position will help you clearly articulate why donors should become a regular donor to your organisation. Make it really make sense for them. So that's a really important key step.
Yeah, that's super helpful. We see in this image that basically your regular donors are at the heart of all the donors that you have. So they place that special, they have this special role or a special treatment almost, a special relationship that you have with your regular donors.
Absolutely.
So with your communication, you really need to show that you know them, right? It maybe actually be good.
Personalize everything for your regular donors. You need to make them feel special in every touch point that you have with them. So that's why, this little diagram is very much about keeping them at the center and at the heart of everything you do, and ensuring and by really putting them into a program and giving them a special kind of name and a profile within your organization, you're able to kind of keep them separate from everything else you do, just so they do feel special and really engaged.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And luckily on Raisley, it's actually really easy to personalize that experience for your regular donors. So when they land on a particular appeal page, you're not asking them for an, generic donation. You actually acknowledge them and say, hey, thank you for your ongoing support. Would you like to contribute an additional donation? That will really speak to them.
Yeah, and because it's really important for regular donors to know that they're known to you and not to feel like they're a number in the, one of your data lists or something like that. So, yeah.
Excellent. Great.
Okay, great. Next up is your online presence. Now, as with everything else in fundraising, ensuring your digital channels are optimized is really important when creating a regular giving program. So many of your donors will actually sign up and become a regular giver online. So for anyone who lands on your website, it's really important that your site is optimized for regular giving. So what you can do is have a look and see if you're able to add a regular giving button on your main navigation so that it stands out to donors and without having to scroll or make any clicks. As you can see in this example we've put with Rural Aid, we added a Give Monthly button on their website navigation. We made it stand out using a different color to their other call to actions. What you could also look at doing is promoting your regular giving on your homepage. So when people land on your website, they see a hero banner or something talking about your regular giving program. Again, it's really important to make it really clear, have a great call to action and a proposition, and then that can link straight through to your regular giving landing page, which we're going to talk to next. Another really important thing to consider is to ensure that anyone who clicks on that Donate Now button and wherever that donate form is housed, whether it's on your website or on Raisley, that you do give them the option to become a regular giver as well. So that's your website, that's your existing website. Next, we're going to talk about landing pages. So I'm not sure how many of you guys use landing pages. They're super easy to do on Raisley, and it's where we do a lot of our work. But they are a really, really great way of housing content that all points to one call to action. And this can be super effective when promoting regular giving. Now, the Rural Aid example that we've got here is when we launched their regular giving program earlier this year. So we created that landing page on Raisley, and there were some key things that we really considered when creating this page. So firstly, we wanted to use a really emotive hero banner with a powerful image and a clear call to action. This is the first thing donors will see, so it has to really have cut through before they scroll down the page. Showcasing compelling content on the page is really important, and you need to make sure it demonstrates your charity's need and the impact that your regular givers can have, especially when they support long term. For example, the types of content you could use could be video. If there's a way that you can get a message across in a really easier way and a more engaging way, video is a great thing to have on a page. One of the big things and the key things to look at is to have $3 to $4 handles that show the impact of a regular donor's monthly gift. And you can do that over the course of a year. So donors want choice, and they want to be able to understand how their impact can change depending on the level they give. So consider these levels you choose and consider them wisely because they will impact your average gift. If you can, with these dollar handles, look to use imagery for each of them to creatively demonstrate the impact your donors can have. Landing pages are a really important aspect and worth taking the time to get right. They are there to help motivate people to take action. So ensuring your landing page is optimized to convert will help drive the success of your regular giving program.
That's so good. I really like what you were saying also about the description for your donation, suggested donation, that impact is actually a longer period impact rather than the $30 that may be visible there, what we are normally used to do. So $30 will help you to provide a gift basket to X.
Yes.
But you're actually talking about impact statement there, which is really honing in what an impact of a regular donor can make compared to a one-off donation.
Absolutely.
Very, very cool.
And putting it out there that it is long-term, that you want these donors to stay long-term and have really long-term impact with your charity. So yeah, it's key.
Great. You talked a little bit about the donation form itself. So when we are linking out from a donate monthly or donate regularly call to action from your main website, make sure that that monthly option is displayed first, because that's basically the flow that people expect. With Raisely, it's easy to swap these amounts or these frequencies around so that the monthly is pre-selected and the first option, but also then provide that one-off option as well, because not everybody is in a position or willing or able to make that choice right there and then. But you don't want to miss out on a donation and make them part of that kind of donor family. So give the option to donate one time as well, in case that's something that people want to do. If you have a generic donation form, maybe embedded on your website, for example, it's more common to have one-off donations sitting as the first option and then monthly as the second option. What we have in Raisely is now some features to really drive people to giving regularly. So we have a nudge that is visible on the first page, basically, of your donation form. You can customize that in wording that makes sense and resonates to you and your donors. And then we also have an opportunity to upsell. So if people choose the one-off donation, to see if we can convert them to regular donor at that step as well. So lots of practical ways along that donor journey to see if we can convert them to regular giving.
Great. Okay, lovely. Moving along to step 4 of our 7-step roadmap, and retention. Now, this has been a buzzword in fundraising for many years, as I'm sure you all know, but for regular giving, it is literally the most important thing to consider. As fundraisers, we know we're all time poor, and sometimes things like retention fall to the bottom of the pile. But if you want to keep your regular givers long-term, you need to ensure you have the measures in place to retain them. Now, the key to a successful regular giving program is about building a strong relationship with your regular donors. You want to make them feel appreciated and engaged and informed along the journey. And this will come through having a really well thought out donor journey in place. So this is something that we love to work on with charities. Now, think long-term about engaging with your regular givers. Start with creating a 12-month donor journey, accounting for all the key times when you will communicate with your donors. For example, your welcome email or annual receipt. Now, along with these transactional opportunities to engage with your regular donors, think of some of those times throughout the years that you can make them feel really special and really appreciated. So, for example, look at acknowledging regular givers at key milestones. So you could look at sending them something on their 1-year anniversary, or you could look at sending them a personalized video from a beneficiary or from your CEO talking about the impact they're making as a regular donor. Always look for opportunities to surprise and delight your regular donors. You could invite them to a special event. Let's say you have a morning tea where your regular donors can come as a special group of people and hear firsthand from one of your beneficiaries about the impact that they are having as a regular donor. Another great way to make your regular donors feel really special is to ensure that they are the first to know. If you guys have got exciting news to share as an organisation, tell your regular donors first. Make them feel like they are part of your inner circle before you announce it to the general public. These are just some of the examples that you could use, you could look at within your donor journey that will make regular givers feel really special and be a valued part of your organization's community. Now, for those of you who do already have an existing regular giving program in place, it's a really great idea to audit all of your existing touch points and test the user experience to ensure it's all working as expected. We find so much, many charities set this up and it's a set and forget, kind of like they think of their regular givers, set and forget, and they don't revisit. This is really where big problems can start to happen, because what it can lead to is donors not signing up, or even worse, you might have a regular giver cancel because something in your process is not making them feel special. Another key thing to think about is ensuring you personalize your communication to your regular donors. If you're including them in your annual appeal, make sure you firstly thank them and acknowledge their regular support before asking for an additional gift. Retaining regular givers is absolutely the key thing to a successful regular giving program. As we all know, it's more effective to keep an existing donor than to acquire a new one. So once they're in, make them feel really special and ensure they have a really great experience and want to stay with you guys and stay committed to supporting your cause.
Yeah, that's a good one. After you go through all that effort to acquire them, you need to make sure that you can maintain that relationship. And I think also, while you say set and forget, it is actually, you can set up certain things as automated, but it doesn't mean you should never look at it again, of course. But you can set up a message within Raisley, and that automatically fires a year after they signed up for their donation, for example. So it's not that you have to do that all of, manually and daily yourself. There are some things you can definitely automate, but make sure that you revisit those messages and make sure they are current.
Absolutely. Okay, moving along. Step 5. So we all know in fundraising, data is king, and it can make or break our campaigns or strategies. I'm wondering if there's many data nerds out there in the audience. I know I am. I'm a big data nerd. I love all things data. So yeah, what we find is really important is to look at, with your regular giving program, is set up tracking of some really key metrics, even top level at first. So things like, how many new regular givers are you getting on board each month? How many are lapsing? What is the value of that regular giving base to your organization? What is the average gift? All of these types of things will give you really clear oversight on how your regular giving program is performing. And it will also allow you to report up and down the organization and bring them all on that journey with you, whether it's achieving the things you want or whether it's not quite, because then everyone can come together and maybe realign and look at tweaking their goals. Having this tracking set up will provide you those insights and the alerts that you'll need to see if there's an issue out there. So for example, if you see a really big drop in regular givers in one particular month, maybe look at the events that happened or the communications that were sent during that time that could have resulted in an increase in cancellations, as depicted here by those little kind of stars. Ensure you are tracking all of your activities so you know what's working and what's not. One of the great features of Raisley is that if you're using tracked links, you're actually able to report on all this through the platform, which is really handy. If you are using an external platform like Raisley for your regular giving, map out that process of how regular givers will be imported back into your CRM, your single source of truth. Understanding how regular givers are profiled in your CRM is really important, as this information will be required for future analysis and reporting on your regular givers, with things like lifetime value and all of those key things that you'll be looking at in the future. Make sure you develop processes that map out different stages. So a regular giver has a life cycle, and they will go through key moments like upgrades, that sometimes they will have a decline because their credit card will decline. So really map out all of those processes. Make sure you've got communications in place and processes in place to deal with those regular givers. Again, always ensuring that you're keeping them on board. Setting up a good data structure and reporting are key, and they will provide the insight and the actions needed to keep progressing your regular giving program. So if you can, definitely recommend allowing some time to map this out correctly before you get launched.
Absolutely. And I think that links back to one of the first things you mentioned about setting your SMART goals, because you highlighted the fact that it needs to be measurable. So not having the data will not show you whether you achieve your goal or whether you need to fine tune or adjust your approach, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. We are getting to a very exciting step now.
We are. So we have now talked about laying all of those really critical foundations, the foundations that we say, we talk to about needing to have set up before you really want to launch your regular giving program. Now, where we want to talk about here is about converting. So once you have those first 5 steps sorted and you're really ready to start promoting your regular giving program, this is where the real fun starts, because this is where you'll start to see new regular givers come on board. Now, the first area you should look to is converting your existing donors, as these guys are known to you, and they will therefore be much easier to convert, and it will be much more cost-effective than acquiring cold donors. Look at testing various channels to see what works at converting. So you could look at email, mail, SMS, phone, newsletters. You might find one channel converts better, or you might find having a multi-channel approach works best to converting your donors. Testing and tracking all of these elements will give you a really evidence-based approach of what works best for your charity. You could also start by targeting your donors who have given multiple times in the last year, as these will be your warmest donors. This will give you a really great opportunity of understanding how those donors are engaging with your regular giving program and if it's working in the way you intended before rolling it out to lapsed and cold audiences. Test your tracking and reporting is all working. Look if there are any leaks in the bucket where you are losing regular givers. It's really important to ensure that all key elements are working well before looking at higher cost cold acquisition.
Yeah, and you can do that segmentation of, your warmest donors versus your lukewarm donors, of course, in your external CRM, but there are also some really good ways to do that in Raisely as well. So if that's the source of all your truth, or at least for your fundraising and supporters, you can set up those segments and use that for your communication, for your personalization, and all that experience.
Yeah.
All right. So now we are binding back right to that poll where we asked what is the most challenging thing, and people said acquiring new donors. And you've talked to all these steps and all these strategies that you actually have to look at before you even go there. So now we finally have arrived at that point. So tell us more about acquisition.
Yeah, sure. Yes. So we finally got here. We know this is what everyone wants to know about. It's acquisition. It's the hot buzzword in fundraising as charities really look to acquire new donors to top up their funnel. But what I'm here to tell you is that acquisition can really be a big investment, as I'm sure a lot of you know. Now, I'm not sure how many of you guys have done acquisition campaigns, but they can be super costly, with current industry standards showing charities are paying anywhere around $500 per donor.
Wow.
Now, for that investment to be worth it, this new regular donor that you acquire will need to stay around supporting monthly for at least 1 to 2 years. Now, that's where the importance of that good retention program comes in place that we spoke about earlier. Because if you're spending $500 to acquire a new donor and you're losing them after 6 months because they're not having a great experience, then that can be really costly and an unrealistic kind of tactic to keep exploring. So what we find is that, go back, always consider your own database first. Make sure you've exhausted everyone that is known to you before considering cold acquisition. Some charities simply won't even have the budget to do cold acquisition. We have so many charities come and talk to us about it. And once they realize the cost, it's like, well, that's just out of our realm. And that's understandable because it is really expensive. And unless you've set up all those foundations and they've been humming for a while and you've really optimized every single step, it's certainly not something that we would recommend going into lightly because it is really expensive. What a lot of charities end up relying on is really cultivating their existing donors. So getting one-off donors on board is a lot easier than acquiring a regular donor for one. And then once they've come on board and you've got these really lovely experiences and donor journeys in place where you're engaging with them along the way, you will then have opportunities to convert those existing donors, and that will be a lot easier for you and a lot less expensive. And it's a really great starting point. Acquisition, it's out there. There's lots of different ways that you can do it out there. We know of lots of different options, but it does cost a lot of money. So certainly not something that you'd go into lightly without essentially doing those first 6 steps really well first. So just to recap, if you're looking at growing your fundraising income, regular giving can do just that. But don't jump in without considering all the steps we've discussed today, as these will help you build really solid foundations and ensure that your regular giving program is able to succeed.
Great. This is so much really good information for everybody to take away. What occurred to me when you were talking, your regular giving, you mentioned it as part of your wider fundraising strategy, right? And it really kind of now hits home to me that all these aspects that you do for your fundraising, whether it's community-based fundraising, a peer-to-peer event and community hubs and DIY fundraising, or appeals and giving days, they all have a connection to that regular giving, because that's the base where you can tap into to maybe convert them to regular donations. Absolutely. And if you are looking at that in isolation, and especially if organizations have separate teams that look at aspects, you may not necessarily not make those connections and those opportunities that are out there with your wider supporter base. So that is for me a really key takeaway, that it is a holistic approach. Everybody is in there to not just get that donation on the day or get Auntie Mildred to donate to Billy. It is actually then also to make sure that that flows into your regular giving program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I just want to mention also that Raisley is known for peer-to-peer, some users for appeals, but we really have ramped up the support that we can give to regular giving programs. And on the topic of acquisition, we've just kind of launched a new feature or an update, and it's not possible for telemarketing companies to push any newly acquired regular donors straight into Raisley through our API. So if you are in that position that you are able to spend money on cold acquisition, we also are making it easy for that process, and less administrative burden, and actually more time for you to focus on that relationship that you pointed out earlier on. All right, I think we have covered all these massively important foundation steps before we even go thinking about converting people to regular giving. So I think, lots of people will have maybe questions, but also a lot already to take home. I just wanted to kind of point out here, and maybe Kellie, you can speak to this yourself. What can you do for charities if they want to talk further about this topic, and perhaps also maybe engage you in getting you to help them with with their regular giving program?
Yeah, sure. So we are Bloome Consulting. We're a fundraising and marketing consultancy, and we work with charities. We provide advice and support across all things fundraising, like appeals, strategies, peer-to-peer, digital fundraising, lotteries, and other special projects. So yeah, get in touch if you've got anything that you need support with.
Excellent. Well, your email address is displayed on the screen right now, so people take note. We will also make sure, of course, that that's communicated in the follow-up email that everybody gets, so they can easily get hold of you. And I mentioned just before, Raisley is really well placed to manage your regular giving program from an administrative point of view, but also enhancing all the things that Kellie was just talking about: personalization, donor journeys, those kind of things. Segmentation. We will soon post a blog that covers all the nuts and bolts about how Raisley can do that. But if you don't want to wait for that, you can use this QR code and book a call with us, and we can show you through that, all these different features. And hopefully start supporting your regular giving program. I think we have quite a bit of time for some questions, and I'll just kind of pause for a little moment for everybody to kind of let this sink in and think about any other questions that haven't come up just yet during the chat. If you have any questions, please add them to the Q&A, and I'll pass it over to Lauren, who will now curate the questions and fire them to probably mostly Kellie, but maybe some to me as well. So Lauren, over to you.
Thank you, Helga. And just a reminder to please keep your questions in the Q&A. That way we can keep them nice and organized and make sure we get to most of them. We have a question ready. Are you ready, Kellie, to jump right in?
Oh, go for it.
Right. So this is a question about communication. So you mentioned acknowledging regular donors when personalizing your annual appeal. The question is, how many appeals can you send out to regular donors in addition to their regular gift? I know you've spoken in the past too about thanking donors and always asking them for money. So just going into that a little bit more.
Yeah, great question.
Sorry, the question is over a 12-month period, so over the course of the year.
Yeah, great question. And look, first thing we will always say is test. So always test how many times. When you're doing out those donor journeys, I suppose the main thing you want to look at is how many touch points. How many times are you touching your regular donors? And whether that be with a transactional kind of message or a more retention-based message. With regards to appeals, what we would generally say is 2 additional asks throughout the year. So if you do, whether you do 2 annual appeals or 4, we would just generally say to target regular givers in 2 of those appeals, and certainly not asking them as much as you're asking your wider network. So look at really, and when you do obviously go to them, the main part of that email is all around thanking them for their current support, and then asking them if they would be willing to give an additional support. But certainly not too many times. You really need to map out how many other touch points you've got and how many other things that you're talking to your regular givers about. You know, depending on whether you've got other peer-to-peer campaigns that you're potentially promoting to your regular donors, or what other ask opportunities have you got in place, and just really making sure that there's not too many, because the last thing you want to do is get to a situation where you've got a regular giver on place who's, let's say they're donating monthly, and you're continually asking them throughout the year for different things. The last thing you want them to do is go, oh, this is too hard. They keep asking, I'm going to just cancel, because you will lose that monthly income. And so, yeah, but test everything. We're big fans in testing. So, you know, you could always pull out a subsegment of your regular donors and test a theory, test how many times you ask, and make sure that you don't see any increases in their attrition before rolling it out to your full base.
Wonderful answer. And another question here. Sorry, there's a few questions about communication that have come through the chat. So if you could please just try and keep, your questions in Q&A. It's easier for us to make sure we get to all of them. And one question that kind of follows along with that is, can you contact regular donors too often?
Absolutely. I think, I think I might have touched on that a little bit with my last answer, but absolutely, which is why I think doing a donor journey and really mapping out that 12-month journey to really understand, because when you do that visually, you can start to see, oh gosh, we're actually contacting our regular donors either not enough or too much. There's always that sweet line in the middle, as to, you know, providing them really engaging content that they can connect and feel really worthy and appreciate the fact that they're supporting you regularly. But then also, you know, dribbling in those kind of messages throughout the year where they can give you additional support if they'd like to. So definitely, yeah. But testing is always what we come back to.
Yeah, but because if you think about it, and you would send a donation receipt for every time that monthly donation comes through, that's already 12, emails that being sent out. So you may want to kind of even consider that and say, maybe we turn that off and we send an end of year financial receipt that summarizes it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something, a good point, Helga, and something we like to look at, because when you map out that 12-month journey, if you've already got 12 communications just with their monthly, receipt or their monthly donation, that's already a lot of communication. So if you can, and if you think that your donors are okay with it, and if you've got that ability, do an annual receipt, and then that way you're opening up those other months to more engaging and more relevant communication messages.
Thanks for that. Another question here is, what is your current opinion on sending an email thank you as opposed to physical letters?
Again, testing, depending on whether you're collecting the address. So, and I suppose how people are signing up to your regular giving. And if you're collecting their address at that point, whether you can send them a letter. It is always it's a great touch point. It's a great different touch point that not many charities use mail anymore. So by sending things out to donors, sometimes it can be that real, oh, wow, I've got something in the mail from my favorite charity. That's really exciting. And it might be something where you're sending them something or a special little gift or something that recognizes their support. So I think using mail as well as email is really important. It just depends on what it's about. What is the motivation of that tactic and that touch point and what you're trying to achieve from it. Mail, you're going to get a lot more cut through, but it's also more expensive. So just considering all those things, yeah.
Yeah, but you can really kind of make most of that because it's expensive. You have to make most of that communication, right? So having a handwritten card, either from staff of the researcher that the donation is funding or a recipient of service, and having a handwritten card saying thank you, that will just hit home, instantly and show that kind of outcome and connection. So yeah, I would think it's a great way to do, but make sure you use it optimum.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And now we have a couple questions about dollar handles. So there's two here. I'll just bring them together. One was more of a deep dive into how you choose those dollar handles. And another one from Benjamin was a bit more specific, that with dollar values are really helpful for organizations that have tangibles, but for advocacy organizations, you need to communicate that a bit differently. So do you have any tips on how to communicate impact for advocacy organizations through those dollar?
So first of all, so with regards to dollar handles and how you choose those levels, it is really important to make sure you're choosing those levels wisely, because it's about putting an option out there in front of a donor. When you're giving those choices, you'll obviously always have another option if they don't want to choose one of your predetermined options. But choosing those key values is really important. And I suppose there's two things that you've got to look at. One, are there certain levels that you've got really great things that you can talk to about the impact of that level over, for example, a year-long period? If they were to give, $30 a month, what does that equate to in a year, and what could that do for your charity? Two, you should always look at your current regular supporter average gift. So we always love to have $2 handles below your current average gift and $2 handles above your current average gift. This will always be encouraging people to go higher, and so you'll see an increase in your average gift. We do this constantly with appeals, is constantly reviewing dollar handles and making sure that we've always got those stretch dollar handles, because every time we put a stretch one on there, we see the average gift increase, which is a really great outcome. In terms of the actual dollar handles, the second part of the question, it can be tricky, and trust me, I get it. We've worked with lots of charities, and some it's just really, really hard to. So you've got to get creative. I suppose you can talk to, it doesn't have to be a tangible item. It can be a way that you are helping. So it's just about being really creative in the way you position that. It doesn't have to be tangible, like they will get a light for this, or, like it's great for the organizations who have those really tangible things that they give and provide. But it's like for most organizations, they don't. So you just have to get really creative. We can share some sites that do this really well after the webinar, if that helps, of organizations in that kind of industry where it is hard to have a tangible product, how they can word their dollar handles that really connects with donors. It just needs to give them some way to know that, okay, how is my monthly donation? How is that going to have an impact? And then sometimes, depending on those levels, they might go to the next level up because they're like, wow, gosh, I actually want to be able to do this for your organization. So, they are really important, but I get it. They're hard to get right and they do take time. But once you've got them right, they can be really successful.
Yeah, and it helps kind of visualizing, because if you just put in an amount on your donation form, you leave it up to the donor to kind of make up for themselves what it actually will do. And of course, they don't know your organization well. So it's really hard to even visualize what impact they're going to make. So it's more to see how you can kind of help that, build that picture for them of what their contribution will do. Another opportunity to get them to get to know your organization that little bit better, because they may know your organization for one aspect, but have no idea that you do something else as well. So you might be an organization that provides services and does advocacy, and that advocacy is not well known. So that's a really good opportunity to point that out as well. So it's kind of, again, building that relationship right through the descriptions of the amounts on your donation form.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great point, Helga. And something I should have mentioned, that those dollar handles can really clearly articulate the different things that you do to support within your charity. So that some people might not know of until they see that in your dollar handles. So really.
We have a great question here from Christoph about lapsed donors. So how many segments should there be for lapsed donors, and what is best practice?
Yeah, okay. So lapsed regular donors, I'm assuming we're talking about here, or just lapsed donors in general?
I think we're talking about lapsed regular donors. Let's focus on that.
Yeah, lapsed regular donors. So I suppose there's a couple of,
Kellie, your audio has dropped out.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not muted. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you,
because you're not on mute.
We can all hear you. Everyone's
is it just me? Oh,
Yeah,
good.
just you.
Oh, that's all right.
Sorry, Helga, you're going to have to do some lip reading.
Okay, I can hear you now, but it just dropped out for a second. Sorry for that intermezzo.
That's okay. That's okay. So we were talking about lapsed regular givers and I think the question was more around what segments you should have.
Yeah. So what's best
Yeah.
practice in terms of segments?
Yeah, look, in terms of lapse, so the key thing here is once someone cancels, once a regular giver cancels, you want to give them a little rest period, right? You don't want to be then starting to hammer them with other kind of appeals and asks. One great thing that we always recommend is really doing some post, surveys to understand why they've cancelled, because that can really help you actually improve your regular giving program. If there is a particular thing that's upset them, it's possible it's upsetting other regular donors. So always try and find out why they've left, if you can. But in terms of that segmentation, we would generally have a couple of segments of lapsed donors. So you'd have a lapsed donor segment within 12 months, and then you'd have a lapsed donor segment within 13 to 24 months. You can then have your longer lapsed donors that you then try and get back on board. And what we generally find works best with lapsed regular donors is just to get them donating again. So rather than going straight back to them with a straight regular giving conversion ask, just get them back donating and supporting your organization again. For some reason they cancelled, and whether it was a financial reason, maybe their credit card declined and you weren't able to get the payments for a while, or maybe it was something that happened that they weren't happy about. Maybe they were getting too many emails or phone calls or what have you. So really important to, when you are communicating with them after a little rest period and trying to bring them back into your orbit, to not go straight in for the hard ask, not go straight back in for the regular giving ask, but to get them in softly, get them in donating once, twice, 3 times a year. Once they're engaged again, then do that conversion ask into regular giving.
Okay, I'm trying to think of which ones to pick. So we have a question here about the mobile messaging versus email. So what you would recommend in terms of
SMS versus email?
Yeah. So what do you think of using mobile messaging as opposed to emails? In my part of the world, we see less and less people using emails and more people using WhatsApp, Telegram, mobile messaging.
Yeah. Oh, look, we're a big fan of every channel. We love using every channel and being as multi-channel approached as possible, because a lot of the time it will take a number of touch points to engage with donors. So it might be that you actually need to send a couple of emails, an SMS, maybe even a follow-up phone call. People are busy, right? People are really time poor. And remembering that, open rates for emails, they average 30%. So already 2/3 of your audience didn't even open your email. They didn't even see your ask. SMS can have a lot more cut through. It's obviously a bit more expensive. It's another great feature that the Raisely platform have that we've used. But yeah, look, we find just testing everything. So testing what works, because every organization and your donors are all different. So really testing if it works just to use one single channel, and then, or if it works better to use a multi-channel approach. Obviously, it all needs to work within your budget. Email's cheapest, and then you obviously step it up as you go into SMS, and then further as you go into mail and phone. But yeah, I think testing is key.
And following on with the testing topic, we had a few questions about what analytics tools, if you're looking across all campaigns and different communication channels, how you track all of that.
Google Analytics. Google Analytics is the key. So I'm not sure how many people out there have migrated over to GA4. It's been the universal system shut down in July. So I know a lot of charities who are still struggling to get their GA4 set up and all of their regular dashboards and reporting and goals and everything set up, because it is quite different. But it is really important as an overarching kind of view as to how all of your digital kind of elements are at play. But that can also help track your offline stuff as well, if you use certain links and codes and things like that. But using tracking links is key. So we find so many charities don't use links to track things, to report on how they're going. But that is something that you can also see in Raisely. So that I found that really beneficial in a lot of campaigns that, Google Analytics gives you that top level view. It can also give you the detailed view. But if you're looking just for those details, immediately when you're pulling out the reports from Raisley, you can add in all your UTM views and everything. So you can see exactly where people are coming from, what tactic you did, where they came from, how they converted. It's, super useful. But Google Analytics is key. Definitely spend some time. And a bit of time is going to be involved getting GA4 set up because it is quite different. It's been really hard for a lot of marketers out there because we were all very used to GA Universal. So, yeah.
Okay, perfect. And we had a few questions coming through, again, going back to the dollar handles with these impact reports. So one question was about how often when you send these impact reports, so if you do have dollar handles associated with impacts. And another question from Rebecca was, how do you avoid donors expecting reporting on specific dollar handles when it's really just showing kind of the breadth, the overall breadth of your work, not necessarily doing those actual.
Yeah, and those dollar handles only really need to be used in those donation forms, right? Everything else that you communicate with your donors doesn't have to really keep going back to those dollar handles. You can talk more broadly, or you can talk about specific programs that you've been able to support thanks to donors. Impact reports are amazing, right? And charities who have, again, the time and the budget to create impact reports, that's where a lot of the time and effort goes into really finding out where the money has gone and what those impacts are. And then when communicating that to regular donors, whether it's that you send that physical, that mail, that impact report, that printed piece, or whether you do an email version, a really nice summarized version of that top level impact that your organization has been able to make thanks to donors, and just give them those key top level things that they can take away and say, wow, they've been able to help, 100,000 kids in the last year with different grants, or, whatever that might look like. Just give them something so that they understand why they're part of that community and what they're able to achieve.
Yeah, and in relation to that, you talked about positioning the program and call them out as a visionary or a true mate, or just kind of make them feel special. What I also sometimes see is charities that have different programs of work, and they have regular giving opportunities around each of those programs. So a donor can choose, yes, I want to donate and support education, but I'm not necessarily interested in water-based projects or in local communities or things like that. So then you tap into the interest, and if you do that, then you also know what your follow-up communication should be about, because they have specifically chosen to support a particular program. So you kind of can assume a little bit. Assuming is always a bit dangerous, but you can assume that that's their primarily interest and why they want to support your organization. So you can be quite clever also finding out more about your regular donors by, offering it in different ways as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think we have time for one more, and this is a big one. It's about acquisition. So I'll just read the question out. So with a CPA around $500, how do you recommend running regular giving acquisition on channels like Facebook that require 50 events in a week in order to gain enough learnings? Especially with a budget of about $25,000 per week isn't viable. We find an ongoing problem is that many channels with regular giving do not have enough learnings to consistently perform well.
Yeah, this is a big one. And I know you mentioned Facebook there. Facebook, I think, has, we've seen lots of changes in Facebook over the years, and where you could get really great results out of Facebook, 3-4+ years ago. The results that charities are getting now out of Facebook advertising is very varied and quite different, and definitely a lot lower than we were seeing as a benchmark, 4+ years ago. Look, in terms of acquisition, I think it's all around understanding, firstly, making sure your foundations are set up. And if you do then have the budget to do that cold acquisition, testing different channels, testing which works, and looking at that, not only that initial cost per acquisition, but what's really key is then looking at that long term, really understanding and looking at the drop off, especially in the first 12 months. So what we've found in the past with things like, there's acquisition channels out there like face-to-face, which is obviously they're really expensive, but they get great cut through. So you can get great numbers. But if you're not able to track and look at the attrition over, especially that first 2 years, because that's when a big majority will drop off, you're not able to kind of understand the full cost of that activity. And some activities might actually cost more but in the long run, they'll cost less, if that makes sense. So you might spend more to acquire a regular giver through one particular channel. And you might think straight away, oh gosh, that's above our limit, that's too much. But then if you track that particular cohort of regular givers long-term, and let's check them at year 1 and year 2, well, they might actually have a better attrition, and you actually might be more wise spending more money in that particular channel, because you're actually getting what we call stickier donors and people that are more connected and more connected to your cause, I suppose. So all of these things are, hard to answer in a simple kind of 2-minute answer, but things to consider when looking at acquisition.
I'm not sure how many questions there are, but, and also you mentioned sometimes these questions can be really hard to answer just in a 30 seconds time frame. But luckily, we are able to tap into your knowledge, and the participants of this webinar are able to tap into your knowledge, and they can reach you on your email address. I can bring it up again one more time to make sure that they can grab that. And like I said, we will also share that with everyone in the follow-up email. So if there are any things that you can help the participants with enhancing or even setting up their regular giving program, Kellie is and her sidekick Kellie. They are a duo of Kellies.
Yes, it's
are amazing and are more than happy to help you with that. And like I said, we will actually post 2 blogs, one summarizing this webinar, so you can read up the key steps, and the second one being and how Razorly can help you support with your regular giving program in a more practical way as well. So watch this space.
Lovely.
Lauren, do you have any final comments as well? Comments from the audience?
Sorry, I'm just typing out a few last minute answers. Just lots of thank yous, and that's it. Yeah, I think we covered most of the questions.
Great, lovely. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
It was a pleasure, Kellie. Also in the lead up and preparing for this and all the robust discussions we had about regular giving, there is so much to it. This has been an amazing overview, and we can't thank you enough. So thank you.
No worries at all. Happy to help.
Okay.